felt it was lots of scenes that were very, well, beautifully written, beautiful writing. Each of the scenes was quite individual and set in its in a particular place and time, and going back into the past. It was setups with dinner, bedrooms, washing, lots of action that had been put into the scenes. My instinct as a designer is I don't ignore all those stage directions, but I kind of go, okay, what's the writer trying to say? What are they trying to communicate in asking the scene to be set in a particular way? For instance, if you set something in a bedroom, it's not about the bed, although it will have a bed in it. It's about what is it being explored between the two people in that. It's about an intimate space. Similarly, with a dinner setup where they're having dinner, I would say, wow, well, what's he trying to achieve by dinner service? Is it about the food? Is it about etiquette? Is it about service, about relationships between servants and masters? So ask all of those other questions about why is the writer deciding to set a scene in a particular place. So that's my first start. And then when I talk to the director, it will be about questions about that, about how do we do this where we can make this fluid and fast-paced, not reliant on props and material stuff. So in this instance, I always start by doing a plot of the play in an Excel spreadsheet where I've just got the scene, where it's meant to be located, what the writer's asked to be there, chairs, tables, beds, whatever it is, props and the costume thing. So it's a standard a breakdown, call it a set breakdown or a set and costume breakdown. So I do that, and I think that's standard thing people do. And then start thinking about how to service the play, how to give the play what it needs in that initial moment, knowing that my relationship with the writer and the director will actually start to change what we've got and get rid of some of the things that have been written, because we can show them visually rather than literally, and we can make things achieved by action from the actors or from just nuances, and then you bring in the lighting, then you'll bring in the costume and staging and movement. But at the start, you start with what is written on the page, because that's where you're all starting from, so it's a good starting point for everybody to be same place. Then I start to do research. Actually, what was a joy about this piece is it's set in a particular time and place. So that was a gift for research, because you can specifically look at a period of time and the costumes that were there, the objects, the house, everything about the play, you research that. And in this case, I got really interested in portraiture, because in contemporary times like now, we would take photographs and we would take selfies of ourselves. So what did Lord Wedderburn do to take a selfie or represent himself? And what they did in 1750s, 60s was they would commission themselves to be painted in a portrait. And there's tons and tons of these paintings of white blokes with their estates, and that's how you showed yourself. You would get an artist to paint a backdrop of a wonderful landscape, then you would stand in front of it and be painted in front of this landscape, and that would be your portrait. And then you might add in your family, and in particular for this piece was an exploration of the portrayal of black servants in particular at that period and how they were portrayed. And I discovered there's a lot of information about it out on the internet, and people have written specific things, and there's specific websites that show a very, very problematic portraiture of black people as slaves, because they just objectified them. They were things. They were allowed to show fruit. They were allowed to pose. So it was a very revealing exploration of that, and that then continued to influence how we all approached the play, and we shared the images we'd found, and the portraits of Joseph. We found portraits that were absolutely felt like that was Joseph Knight and that was Lord Wedderburn, and started to use those as a starting point for the design. So the research into how you show yourself as a wealthy landowner and slave owner and man with servants and stuff was the starting point, and then that's how the design started to come together. So along with that, we're looking at the houses, the portraits, the whole way the society looked at itself, was the exploration into the costume and other period detail. Along with all the other considerations of what you're trying to do with the design and with the period and objects and props, and trying to accommodate all these other things, including the different spaces, is the Green Book, which is about sustainability, which I'm really champion for that. From the perspective of a designer, it's very different when you're dealing with sustainability, reusing, upcycling, adapting, is you can't just design it and go, it has to be like this, because you've got to actually try to find and adapt. So you have an idea of what you're looking for and what you want, but it's then a case of going, well, we've got to go out there and see who's got what and what we can adapt. So then in normal circumstances, you would design to the very letter, to the very detail of everything. You'd go, well, I want this here, I want that there, I'd like a pink bow here, I'd like these breeches to be this colour and this and this and this. And, you know, that's not an approach that we can take anymore. We want to reuse things. And so we started with costume. We came here very early and did a big haul of what was possible. With the set items, it was what we got in stock that could be adapted and reused. And I knew what I wanted, and it's this framed portrait, framed picture. We knew the costumes were going to be period, and then there was the floor. And so the floor has been upcycled from other sources, and that was a kind of negotiable about the size and shape until we knew what we could get our hands on. The table was made from stock stuff here. The chairs are already existing, so they were all recycled, upcycled, all painted. The frame was made from stuff that was already around the place. So a lot of those elements all came together out of the goodwill of everybody in both Pitlochry Festival Theatre and the NTS. So there's been a kind of a great sense of, yeah, we want to make this in a sustainable and an ethical way. So that was fantastic, and the results are great, and people are very happy. It's we're not spending money for the sake of it and then throwing something away. That we were starting in Pitlochry, so that to a certain extent is dictating the configuration of the stage as it is, which is small. It's very small, and at Pitlochry we're in 3 sides. So the design will work 3 sides or end on. It is an end-on design. Because of timing of the actors' actions, and it's all very fluid and very tight, that every single element of changing chairs and table, moving things, props, the actors' position for things is all really orchestrated for this small space. And so when it goes to bigger spaces, it will just breathe a little bit bigger. but it will still be the same. So it's going to spaces that are much bigger but should just sit with this black space around it. So we designed it and have rehearsed it for the smaller space, and it might just ease a bit when it goes into the bigger spaces. The actors and director and movement team have really made it work in a theatrical way. So they've cut a lot of things and made it use the table in ways that are really interesting, use the floor, use the space to just theatrical journey of the characters. But the other elements that really are influencing how we understand the story and go on a journey is sound and the composition, which is very, very important to knowing where we are and where we're going to and taking us through that. So sound and the sound composition. The lighting, obviously, you kind of can't design with the lighting in mind because that's the lighting designer's job, but you kind of hope that they're going to be able to, and they always do, make a journey for the audience. So you get a sense of different lighting and different sound. And then we've got the backdrop, which is playing a massive role in taking us from the estate in Scotland, the Wedderburn estate, and the painting of Loch Katrine. Then that transforms into the nightmare of the plantation in Jamaica. And that's done through front lighting the image, and you get the portrait, the painting of the landscape as it looks normally. And then when we backlight it, there's a reverse image that's printed on the back, which is a version of that landscape that's been digitally adjusted, and so gives us this sort of headachy Jamaica. And it's not literal Jamaica, it's Wedderburn and Joseph Knight's nightmare of that heat and intensity and awful things that happened. So that's how we go on that journey. And the interesting thing from a technical point of view about the backdrop is there's a moments where you can see both the positive front image and the back image starting to bleed through. So that's in itself has a journey of how the backdrop starts, and then we get to this very, very vibrant image. I think generally things in terms of the set were changing the size of the table so that it was the right size, because we didn't know until we started to rehearse the size of that table. It could be big or it could have been smaller. Were there 4 chairs, 3 chairs? We didn't know until they started to rehearse. So there's always that amount of flexibility about what comes from rehearsal that will help the actors tell the story. Let's start with the floor. The floor is a glossy black square, and that is surrounded by a very dark carpet. So that gives you 2 things. It gives you a soft place to walk. If you walk on the carpet, you can't hear your feet as much. When you walk on the glossy black area, you make a noise. So there's a different sound there. The black gloss floor tells us we're somewhere expensive without being a literal marble floor of a house. So we don't want to be architectural. So the design is not trying to do architecture of a house, because if we try to do that, it just becomes very predictable. And we want the play to be able to go into more imaginative and different kind of modes and tempos. Then we've got a table and chairs, which are part of the requirement, I think, of the dramatic text, which needs them to be playing chess, to be eating, to be drinking. And it also gives us a playful area to have bedroom, to have stand on the table and be somewhere else. So table and chairs, a few small props, and then the backdrop, which is Loch Katrine, and that's the set. I really love the costumes, and I think that they're not over fussy. They work together as a palette of, you know, the 4 characters look like they live in the same world. I think one of the most important things is the silhouette, the shape of a costume, that it captures the period. So if you look at the maid, she has padding underneath called bum rolls, and it's smaller bum roll that she wears than the lady, who wears quite a larger bum roll. They both have corsets. The corsets are brilliantly fitted. The costumes, they don't look fake. They look like clothes rather than costume. And they're just a great, yeah, they look really good. I mean, the costumes we've managed to achieve, the brilliant costume team, is that the pink in Lady Margaret's costumes echoed in Annie's apron, which is an echo in that same pink in the chair covers. So there's a palette of there. So the palette of colours sit well together. The shape of the costumes, the silhouette, it's really enjoyable because you can't often see those costume details so close up. And we're not trying to recreate period costume in a sense that they're not wearing wigs. They would have worn wigs, but we're not wearing wigs. That's sort of would be going too far, making it difficult. But it captures the period really nicely. The shapes look great. So I think the costumes look fantastic.